And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage risk to recovery, and we've managed more than $1 billion in recovery. We've helped community associations, business owners, and high net worth individuals navigate a difficult process of both acquiring new insurance, renewing, as well as recovering from loss. And more today, we are being called on as new buildings turned over to deal with construction-related damage claims. Whether that's through the 558 process or a third-party claim, we are your one source for everything that you need in order to navigate that process. Now, most lawyers or law firms might tell you that that's not possible, that you need to have counsel involved. And I beg of you to actually read the Florida statute for 558 construction defects. And it talks about avoiding the huge unexpected costs related to actually engaging with counsel to file a lawsuit. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a role for attorneys. There is, but we need to be actually targeted in our approach to these things. We need to make meaningful effort to do these things to advantage the community association, particularly who are nonprofits and have no other source of income. And I wanted to start out with this episode talking about this specific issue because it's coming up quite a bit. And I'm hearing rumblings from community association law firms that have a sort of disdain for trying to help or advantage the community associations. I really can say it because they don't want to understand the process of actually doing this in a way that doesn't result in actual litigation. But there is a way to dealing with it. Now, we're not only talking about construction-related defect claims that may be subject to the 558 Florida statute in its process, but we're also talking about contractors that are on or off site that may cause damage to your community association. There is a process for dealing with those things and a way in which you can navigate that process, again, without the need to resort to litigation. And that's because more often than not, insurance is defending and paying these claims. And most attorneys that do this will admit that they are dealing with the insurance company. Typically, though, they're dealing with a defense attorney, not the adjuster. The adjuster behind the scenes that's pulling all the strings, making all the decisions, or at least being the eyes and ears for the decision makers back at the insurance company. And that's a little bit something that the attorneys in this industry don't want you to know about. Again, they're most often defending and paying. Well, if an insurance company is most often defending and paying, then why aren't we? And it begs the question, and I'm going to say it this way, and I'm going to preface, and I'm going to go back to it and say, it begs the question, why aren't we first adjusting these claims before we litigate the claims? Why is everything that we're doing couched in some sort of posturing that is intended to antagonize the other side? Why can't we have a meaningful adjustment process? Well, again, whether you're dealing with construction damages that may be related to a 558 process or not, you don't need to, let me say it this way, you don't need to antagonize the other side. There's no reason for it. And oftentimes, these damages are covered under both first party, which is your own insurance, as well as third party in part. So, meaning that there are some aspects of it that you may be able to get today from your own insurance and then get the remainder of the damages from a third party's insurers or vice versa. You may proceed under the idea that you have a willing or a third party that is willing to negotiate and work with you to resolve your issues and damages, short of you actually making claims or filing a lawsuit. And that there is a process for that. In fact, again, if you look at the Florida statute under 558, most of that statute talks about this specific issue. It talks about a process that's been intended to be meaningful, that's intended to help community associations, business owners, homeowners dealing with construction-related damages that are the result of someone's workmanship, defect, et cetera, or the ensuing damages that may result because of that defect. And again, there's common case law, there's policy conditions, there's a lot of things that are moving pieces, if you will, that need to be addressed specifically and correctly in order to have a meaningful process. A meaningful process that shouldn't take, on average, 2 to 10 years for a 558 claim, or if you will, or lawsuit that we typically see in your typical, filed by your typical attorney. I mean, it just, sadly, you're seeing that these types of lawsuits take 2 to 10 years. However, the adjustment of claims typically takes 4 to 8 months. And again, a lot of times we see in the litigation process a demand for an enormous amount of money, way beyond any sort of expectation of getting it resolved, and more intended to antagonize the other side with the hopes that they would come to the table with something you'd be willing to accept. However, if you're more targeted and more meaningful in the process, we have found that you can get this done sooner rather than later, and also mitigate a lot of the costs that we typically would associate with dealing with the 558 process or a construction-related claim. Again, if that's on-site or off-site and it's not subject to the 558 process, there is a way to deal with these things. Now, with soaring deductibles that we see associated with water losses particularly, I was told by one broker recently, he saw a deductible for a community association in the Miami area that has a $1 million water deductible. He also educated us and told us that on average, we were seeing between $50,000 to $250,000 deductibles for water losses. Now, we have seen and we're monitoring the rise in deductibles as it relates to many different types of claims, whether it's hurricane, and again, the subset of issues there with the wind-driven rain. We've talked about that in many other prior episodes, as well as with water, the exclusion for mold. We used to have limitations around mold and some coverage for it. I've mentioned before in prior broadcasts about and talking about how most claims these days, particularly in the commercial policy forms, are negotiated and settled based on sublimits, really not even the limits themselves of the full amount of the policy, but sublimits. And within those sublimits, there's additional endorsements and exclusions that you need to help navigate, that you need to understand to be able to navigate the process. That's particularly important when you're dealing with any sort of loss that stems from a construction issue. And it's important that you make sure that you fully understand the limitations of your own insurance as well as a third party's insurance as it relates to it. So if in one particular instance, we had a plumber fixing a drain for a roof, and the actual plumber's insurance had a limitation exclusion for any work related to gutters, plumbing, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to fully understand what coverage may be available there. You need to understand what an OSIP, a RAP policy, a CSIP, how contractors and general contractors as well as developers participate in those things. Who's the named insured? Who's not? Who's actually participating? Who is not? And if they're not participating, what insurance do they have? And how would that insurance work with other insurance? Now, there's typically provisions in those policies that talks about that and how that will be divvied up or how those policies will work together, which one is primary or secondary. Are there layers to the insurance policy? Is it one insurer or multiple insurers on each layer? Or are they pro rata? An instance that would be a pro rata. Or are they just simply layered, where one insurance company takes a certain amount of insurance, the first 0 to $2.5 million, $2.5 million to $5 million goes to another insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Or is it the first 0 to $2.5 million is a collection of insurance companies? Why is that important? Because notice is probably one of the biggest issues that we deal with when trying to navigate construction-related damages or the losses that stem from them. So it's really important that notice is given properly and promptly and accurately. And when dealing with a third-party claim, you're going to be dealing with issues of negligence and having to prove it, and causation becomes a big part of that. Where is the source of the issue, and what did they do, and when were they there, and how was it done, and what did you do to preserve the evidence and damage? Those things become essential to the positive outcome or the success of the claims that are being made. And we're not talking about lawsuits. Again, you can reserve or preserve your rights to bring suit at some further time, but again, why not adjust a claim and adjust the claim timely and properly with the experts that you need in order to effectively navigate that process? And that's exactly what we do here at GlobalPro. We've done it tens of millions of dollars worth of claims to date. And again, it's something we're going to talk a lot about. We're going to keep talking more about it. We have classes built around this that we're teaching to CAMs as well as to other professionals. In fact, we taught a class to numerous law firms on this specific issue. We have sat down and gone through workshops with attorneys that are experts in the field of construction-related damage. But, however, their processes are typically built to litigate. And unfortunately, right now, where you're seeing more insurance companies defend and pay these claims, it's really important that you understand that. In fact, if you actually look at the Florida statute 4558, it talks about several different ways you are going to get compensated for your damages. Now, there's also provisions in there about others doing work for you, whether that's the contractor that caused the issue, et cetera, et cetera. But again, there's a few ways in which you will get paid, and many of that has to do with insurance. In fact, the word claimant is recited numerous times within the actual statute and talks deeply about claimant. Claimant meaning someone that's making a claim on someone else's insurance as a third-party claimant, and understanding your role in that process and what you need to do to advantage your community association, your business, if you have suffered at the hands of a contractor or a developer, or there are ongoing issues that are not resolved. Also, be mindful of new statute of limitations. There was recent laws that were passed. I actually think that is an advantage to getting these things done sooner. It's making people act more promptly and also shining a brighter light on our processes, because our processes are intended to expedite this process to advantage you as a claimant or as a policyholder. Again, this may be a situation where you have both first-party and third-party claims, but it doesn't necessarily need to be one or the other. It can be a combination of the two. There could be a dual-track approach here. One, preserving your rights to bring suit. The other one, making sure that the claims are properly noticed and that you have fully and completely adjusted claim, or at least done everything that you are obligated to do, whether it's regards to your own insurance or a third party's insurance. Again, we have had tremendous amount of success. This is definitely something you should be investigating further. Our colleagues in the litigation world have noticed our success, have recognized our success in doing these things. We're working more and more closely with them to making sure that they have the information they need to be more effective at their job as well, because this does help them. And many of them do support us in our efforts and what we're trying to accomplish, because they do realize that while many of the issues can get resolved through our processes, there may be some issues that do need the insistence of an attorney from the get-go, and we recognize that as well. I would never advocate against not consulting or at least consulting or speaking with your advisor and attorney about the processes to educate yourself more about it. I would never do that. Unfortunately, we have seen law firms advocate against involving us in the process or even speaking to us, which, again, be mindful of this. Scratch your head at it. Again, they're not adjusters. They don't navigate the insurance claims process all the time. In fact, most of what they're doing is building a case for litigation. Again, we want to try to adjust these claims because we understand even if you were to litigate it, most often the insurance company is going to be defending and paying these things. So if you haven't done everything that you need to do in order to properly or adjust the claim or cooperate or fulfilled your obligations on your side, it's only going to drag out that process. And most often that's only going to advantage the law firms on both sides that are involved in it. Again, we've reached out to the developer world, to the contractor world, and we've spoken with and we're actively involved in trade organizations for construction industry, talking about these real issues, trying to bring closure to many of these problems that linger over a lot of community associations. They hold up the closings on properties. There's so many reasons why you want to look at this opportunity to get these things done sooner and for the benefit of your community association. And this is for you out there, policyholders, community association managers, whether you're on the board or you're on a committee. These are things that you should be talking about and thinking about. And it doesn't cost you anything to ask questions. So let us know how we can help you navigate this process from the beginning to the end. We're here for you. We want to make sure you have everything you need, because when you get to the end of this process, then you have to start to rebuild. And you're still obtaining new insurance for your community association. You're planning for that next storm event. You're planning for storm season. You're planning for the winter. You're doing whatever you need to do in order to make sure that your association is in the best position possible financially. So you need to take action. We're running a huge campaign about taking action, and this is all about take action. So make sure that you be prepared and make sure that you're taking action, and let us know how you can help. And now, I mentioned storm season. The tropics are very much on fire right now. They are very active, and we want to make sure that all of you have the information you need. So if you haven't already, go to globalpro.com. We're in the news. If you look at the resource section, you'll see all kinds of blog posts there with a bunch of information about things we're doing, events that we're hosting, talking about important issues, claims advocate issues that we're publishing, to making sure that you have all the latest and greatest industry information from our perspective, the perspective of a policyholder, the advocate that makes sure that for over a decade, policyholders have what they need in the event that something were to happen, or if you're placing insurance or renewing a policy. Again, all of this works together. It's a cyclical process. Once you've bought that first policy, you get in that cycle, right? And we want to make sure at any point during that cycle, the Ready, Recover, Rebuild, that you have what you need, and making sure that you check out our resource section, but also making sure that you've hit the subscribe button, you liked us and follow us on our social media. You will make sure that you will get updates and the moment that we issue some notice or information that is pertinent to you as a policyholder or a claimant. So we have a whole storm center on our website. We are going to be tracking these storms, giving information about our community, how these things are impacting our communities, what we're doing at the right there with the first responders to help our community recover faster and better from these disasters. We give back tremendously through our foundation, the GlobalPro Cares Foundation, whether it's through our initiative, which is Fresh Kicks and Cuts, or if it's just collecting cans of food or other articles of clothing, or things for young children, whether it's diapers and creams and things that are expensive to replace if you were to lose everything. And people do at times lose everything. Their homes get washed away. And a $10 bottle of cream for a baby is more expensive than ever before, because, again, they have nothing. So whatever you can do to help, we want to make sure you have the information about all the charitable efforts that are going on in our community, and we're going to make sure that that stuff is included there as well. But again, we're just tracking the storms. Nothing has hit yet, but there could be. And we need to make sure that you're taking action and you're doing everything that you can. So we're tracking Brett. We're tracking the storm behind it, but also some of these low-pressure systems that keep on pushing through, whether it's Texas, the Gulf Coast, as well as the Florida and up the eastern coastline. It's important that you track these things, because within a moment of days or hours, the weather changes. And if you're in the South Florida area, you are seeing some of the most historical rain events that we've seen in history. Fort Lauderdale, obviously, early this year already. I mean, it shut down the entire airport. You just recently, I believe it was last week, Miami-Dade and Fort Lauderdale was shut down again because of the extreme weather event that was going on. I know in my own community, 3 homes were struck by lightning. 3 homes. I was talking with some of the residents that have lived there from the inception of the community, and they couldn't think of a time that maybe 1 home got hit. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen, but 3 homes in one storm got hit. There's a lot of lightning. There's a lot of rain, there's a lot of flooding, there's a tremendous amount of wind, and that's going to become more and more important with our higher deductibles and less coverage and further limitations, which you see when wind-driven rain and other things and issues like that. You need to know what you need to be doing in order to advantage yourself in the claims process, because the insurance companies have proven. Just look at all of the information coming out from the handling, or the mishandling, if you will, of the Hurricane Ian claims on the west coast of Florida. So if you're in the coastal area, whether it's Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, I would say Alabama, Florida, Carolinas, and up through Maine, take note of what happened after Hurricane Ian. That is recent history. And if that isn't proof that there's an issue in the industry, and I've read a lot of articles being pushed hard by insurance industry advocates that are working on behalf of companies, peddling this idea that aggressive online marketing is causing a rise in litigation, and that is stressing the insurance market, and that's why we can't get a reinsurance and why it's so expensive. there is no direct connection between the two. It's not. Now, they can insinuate that there is one, but even their own data and facts don't really add up to it. And I've dug through a lot of these reports. I've looked at these things, and we'll be issuing our own rebuttal to some of the findings, because the one thing that they're ignoring and they're not citing to is this recent issue with the Hurricane Ian payouts, where insurance companies were, as we will see, changing reports. No rhyme or reason, just reducing the valuations. And their own advocates, their own adjusters, are now suing them in a class action lawsuit. You've seen that. You've seen the Value Penguin report, which I've mentioned so many times on these reports, talking about the rise of dissatisfaction. 68% of policyholders reported dissatisfaction, mostly related to claims and the settlements, the payouts, the length of time it's taking, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that you would think that, again, you buy this insurance not to save you time and money, despite the gross amount of misleading marketing and advertising by most of insurance companies talking about how they're going to save you time and money, when really the reason why you're buying insurance is to protect you financially, to make you whole. And there's very little focus in a lot of this catchy little advertisements with these cartoon characters and whatever else. But the reality of it is that reason why you're buying this is to protect your financial interest as well as potentially a lien holder's interest, a mortgage company, your bank, right? But I don't believe and for a lot of reasons, the banks have woken up to the realization that most of the policies sold in the coastal areas exclude coverages that are essential to their own financial interest. And I believe that for a lot of community associations, most of the policies that are being sold in Florida do not comply with the obligations under the Florida statute. Again, it's my opinion on this situation, because if I look at certain things and I ask certain industry so-called experts and advisors and brokers and industry lobbyists about these things, they quickly transition and pivot and try to blame others, right? They say, oh, well, that's there because of this. It's like, well, but it's there. It's not there anymore. And even if I wanted that type of coverage or a reduced value, I can't even get someone to quote me for it, regardless of the price of it. Because again, it's not about how much time it's going to save me or money it's going to save me. It's about what it's going to do for me in the event that something were to happen. How is it going to make me financially whole? So why am I not presented the option, even if it's outside of my budget or price range? I'm not even presented that as an option. It's not even being made available to me. And I don't believe the legislator has really woken up to this realization, particularly in Florida, where we've seen an actual massive shift in the favor of the insurance industry over the last few years, which absolutely does nothing to help the policyholder. It's tremendously un-American in the fact that it does not help business owners. It's costing us more money. And when they have not only is the insurance costing you more money, you actually have less coverage, and there's no initiative to look at these that I have seen. Now, again, if I'm wrong, please let me know. But where's the initiative to look at the products that are being sold, to understand that while, yes, we may be able to buy something, but is that something actually going to do something for us financially when we have a loss? And to me, again, I've not seen any sort of initiative by the industry talking or dealing with this particular issue. Let's call it a quiet pandemic, if you will, with regards to insurance, where you're seeing policies nationally, I would say in the U.S., for the most part, are being stripped of coverages, rising deductibles, rising costs. You're seeing, in most states, laws being passed that are protecting these companies that are selling these inferior products for more money. So your access to courts, to advocates is they're making it more difficult and more expensive and costly. Or in some instances, they're basically disincentivizing someone to be in the industry, so you have less people in it, so you have less access to it. And even if you can find someone that's willing to participate in this process or to help you, again, their means is significantly limited and relative to the means of which, or access to means that the insurance industry has on their side. So again, where are the checks and balances? The time will tell. But that's what this show's all about. This show's all about to bring real issues to you, to talk about these things openly, like I talk about the 558 statute in Florida. I'm not hiding behind these issues. I'm not trying to avoid these. I want an open conversation and dialogue with law firms, with industry advocates, whether that's a trade organization or lobbyists or legislators. I want to talk about these issues about alternatives to dealing with these things to advantage the end user, right? To advantage the association, the policyholder, or the business owner. That's why these things, supposedly these laws are in place to protect the public, not to protect the financial interests of a law firm or a specific industry, right? They're there to protect the public. So how are they protecting the public? How are they advantaging you? You, the community association manager, the board member, how are they helping you as a policyholder? I'd like to have an open conversation about that. We're going to continue to bring on industry experts to the Recovery Report Live every single week, right here, same time, same place. If you haven't already, again, like us and follow us on all the social media. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, big time LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an amazing opportunity to connect with a lot of professionals. I'm a proponent of getting on LinkedIn, getting involved in your community and your professional industries, and sharing information. The best way we can help each other is to share information, whether it is from the disaster or it's just information like this. Let's share information. Our opinions may differ, but that's okay. Come on and share. There may be another way to look at these things. Educate me about your position on these things. You've heard mine. I want to hear yours. So join us every single week right here at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess. Thanks for joining me this week. I'll see you next week, same time, same place.